Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking about the issue of human scale and the size of government. I looked at Robert A. Daly and Edward R. Tufte's Size and Democracy from 1973. The book looks at a huge political dilemma. How does population size impact the maintenance of a country's democracy? Well, what they ended up finding was that there isn't really an ideal size that fits all, but there do exist certain trade offs between citizen participation and a government's ability to actually solve major issues. So, what they found was that smaller governments they're basically allow for more direct citizen participation. Ordinary people have a bigger say in how their community or even countries run, and generally speaking, though, these smaller governments don't have as many resources as bigger ones. Basically, it's more difficult for them to solve major issues like a natural disaster or a depression or something like this. By contrast, larger governments have the resources to solve these major issues, but the trade off is that citizens' voices have become more diluted, and there's also a lot more bureaucracy. So that leads to something of a feeling of disconnect between citizens and their ability to participate and shape the country's destiny and also the governing forces. In order to find the right balance, the authors argue that local governments are way better for community related matters. Uh, Small governments are better for community related matters, while national or even transnational bodies are better for managing larger scale societal issues and disruptions. I also looked at Alberto Alesina and Romain Vachira, who examined the issue of big and small government from an economic lens. So they found that smaller countries, for instance, tend to have bigger governments, actually. These small countries struggle economically because they don't have as big of an internal market since the population tends to naturally be smaller. So, one way that they've sidestepped this is to increase free trade and rely more on the global market. Now, that would allow for increased prosperity, but it also leaves a lot of vulnerabilities, such as if there's a global recession or a trade war. Obviously, that would be quite harmful. And one way of these smaller countries mitigating this is to increase the social safety net, which comes with a whole host of other trade offs and issues. Bigger countries, on the other hand, tend to have larger internal markets due to bigger populations. And then that, of course, only gets expanded if they really adopt free trade practices. Larger countries also can spread fixed costs like the legal system or the armed forces. So they just have a little bit of an easier time. So that was something that I found interesting from the economic lens. I also looked at Richard H. Pildes, who argues that in American discourse, we do tend to have this argument about whether big or small government is better. Now, Pildes argues that more attention has been paid to that than to what it actually should be, which is how to effectively wield power. His takeaway is that liberty needs a government with checks and balances, yet stability needs a competently run government. American constitutional thought largely prioritized checks and balances to prevent tyranny, but there were no such guidelines on public law for competent governance. And because of the lack of prioritization with that, it has also led for increased political fractures and has eroded public trust in democracy and in government as a whole. So, how does that actually impact the human scale issue or the size of government? Well, if people are feeling that the government is too detached from their lives or things that are important to them, or if they feel that the government simply isn't working, there's likely to be a decrease in public participation, which of course is something that we see today, that many people, particularly in local elections, aren't voting as much as they used to, or as some would argue, as much as they should. And that also does have an impact on smaller government, such as in states, in counties or townships, in cities, and so on and so forth. So I found these to be really interesting sources that I think get to the heart of the problem that we are looking at for this week's video discussion thread. I look forward to hearing what everyone else found in their own topic. And thank you for listening.